Hey Stitchers, your girl Chris here. Welcome back to my channel on social where it's totally cool to be obsessed with sewing. So for today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you my project plan for the Sew Frugal 2024 challenge. In case you missed it, I did share a video a couple days ago detailing what the challenge is, who's running it, what the rules are, that sort of thing. So if you missed it, I'll pop it in here or somewhere so that you can go ahead and check it out. Now, I also shared in that video 5 free patterns that you can hack as part of the Sew Frugal challenge. No, you guys, I am a pattern hacker. There is no denying it. If you don't know what pattern hacking is, it's really just taking a base pattern and putting your own spin on it to create something new. It doesn't always have to be a huge hack. It can be something simple like changing the proportions of a skirt, for example, or adding or removing sleeves, or changing the neckline, that sort of thing. But I do like to put my own spin on patterns that I already know fit me pretty well, and it just allows my creativity to be like, boom, in your face. So it's no surprise that I decided to go with pattern hacking as like my niche project idea for this challenge. Now it's a vlogging challenge, and so for the month of March, 2 vloggers every day have been talking about this challenge and sharing free patterns with you. And so the internets, you guys, are flooded right now with lots of inspiration from lots of amazing vloggers about free patterns out there and what you might want to make up for the challenge. So obviously I wanted to put my own little tweak on it, and that's what I came up with: pattern hacking. So it should be no surprise that I'm going to go about pattern hacking one of the patterns that I shared with you from that video. Can you guess which one? All right. I'll take you out of your misery. I went with the Tessuti Fabrics maxi or midi skirt. I can't remember what the name of it right now is, but I'll go ahead and pop it in here or somewhere so that you guys can see what it looks like in its original form. Just before we get into all the juicy details about my project plan, let me satisfy your curiosity and tell you what I'm wearing. So I'm wearing the Sage Brush Top by Friday Pattern Company, and I made this as part of one of the Minerva kits that I got maybe 2 or so years ago. I really like this pattern, you guys, and I did love this fabric, but I know that it is not in my best colors. And how do I know this? Because I had my colors professionally done and I am a twilight winter. So some of these colors, especially the orange, do nothing for your girl. But I wear this top anyway because I like this top. I like the silhouette. It's comfortable. It fits well. And so I just know that on the days that I wear this top, I won't look my best. And that's completely fine with me, especially on days like today when I feel like crap anyway, and my face is looking how it's looking because Mother Nature has taken a grip, you guys, a chokehold on your girl. And so you get what you get. Now, in the event that you want to know what your best colors are, go ahead and check out Your Color Guru and be sure to use my code on social so that you can save yourself a couple bucks. Because let's be real, who doesn't want to save a couple bucks? Now that you know what I'm wearing and your curiosity has been satisfied, let's get into my project plans, shall we? So like I said, I'm going to be working with the Tessuti Fabrics free skirt pattern. Midi, maxi, midi, maxi. Oh, anyways, it's their free skirt pattern. It's long, you guys. I know it falls below the knee. And so for my hack, I want to do a couple things to this skirt. So the first thing I need to do, you guys, is to shorten this baby. Now, at my age, my legs are probably my best asset after having 2 kids. You know, the upper part of me, not as sexy as my lower half, if I do say so myself. And so I like to show a little bit of leg. And because it's really, really hot where I live, you can't go wrong with a mini skirt. So the first thing I'm going to do is chop it apart and make it into a mini skirt. Now, I do know that I also want to play with the idea of tiers. And I feel like I'm going to go with 2 tiers, but I haven't decided yet if tier 2 is going to be an exposed ruffle tier. Now, I've previously dismissed the idea of an exposed ruffle tier. It didn't really, I don't know, it didn't really click with me from before. But for some reason, with this hack, that is what has been coming to my mind. Like the exposed ruffle as opposed to like the integrated ruffle or whatever you call it, like the one that's actually attached right side to right side, that sort of thing. But between when I'm filming this video and when I actually cut my fabric, then I know it might change. So for now, I'm leaning towards the exposed ruffle, but don't hold me to it because that might change. Now, aside from that, this skirt does have 3 elastic casings at the waistline, which will be great for my mommy tummy. Oh my God, that is bound to be hella comfortable at my waistline. But instead of doing 3 rows of elastic, I want to do my middle casing with a drawstring. Again, I just think it would make for a pretty feature. You know, you can have this little bow tie right at the waistline and just sort of break up all of the elastic that's going to be going on. Now, this pattern does come with like 3 pockets, and I think I want to put my pockets in because your girl love pockets. I mean, I recently found out actually that everybody doesn't love pockets, and that was like mind blowing to me. I thought everybody loved pockets, but I was wrong. I was wrong, you guys. But I do think I want to go ahead and put pockets in my skirt. It really just depends on the length I want to end up with and whether I'm going to do like the exposed ruffle as opposed to like the internal ruffle. That might impact my decision to add pockets, but again, we shall see. Now that you know where my mind is heading, let me show you guys the fabric. Like, duh, what am I going to be sewing up? That's probably the most intriguing part of any make. Fabric choice, you guys. I believe fabric choice is everything. And I do try to pick um the best possible fabric for my patterns. Does it always work out in my favor? Hell no. Point to note, what you can glimpse on the side of this video was a collaboration with one of my fellow sew sisters. I don't think I've shared it with you guys yet, and so it's remaining in the background. But can I tell you, I loved my fabric, but I did not like my fabric to pattern pairing in this one. So you'll hear all about it. If I've posted it already, then I'll be sure to drop the links in so that you can see. But if not, just know it'll be coming at you real soon. So yes, the fabric. So my lovelies, this is my fabric. Isn't it gorgeous? I think I shared this fabric. As a matter of fact, I know I shared this fabric with you in my recent fabric haul, which was the Ankara fabric haul from Afrique Clothing Store. And I got 3 yards of this gorgeous Ankara. And I don't know, I just think this fabric is going to be perfection for this like mini skirt, revamped Tessuti Fabrics free skirt pattern thingy-mabop that I'm going to be working on. Ankara fabrics are very stable, but they do gather quite well, I find. Like from my previous Ankara makes, I find that they take gathering so beautifully. And because this fabric is like jam-packed with color and print and that sort of thing, I just think that this will make for a really cool skirt that I can pair with lots and lots and lots of tops in my wardrobe. So again, this is the fabric. Mm, 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 mm. So you guys, know that you know what my plans are. Let's head on over to the cutting table so that we can start hacking our pattern. But actually, qualification. This pattern is based on pattern instructions. So there's no printed like pieces of paper that you sort of stick together and create your pattern. It's just like a series of squares or dimensions or whatever that Tessuti gives you and the instructions that go along with it so that you can put this pattern together. So bonus tip, it saves you some paper, but it does make it just a little bit more, I don't want to say difficult, but difficult to show you guys the process because I'm actually going to be doing the hack on the fabric itself instead of on a piece of paper. But anyways, I will try my best with that in mind to share as much of the process with you as I can, and I'll try to detail what it is that I'm doing and the changes that I'm making to those instructions. So come with me to the cutting table. All right, so this is what the pattern looks like. There are no like line drawings on the website. They just have pictures of models in the skirt. So it is a long, I think this is a midi length skirt with like a gathered waistline, and the gathering is achieved by 3 rows of elastic. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and chop this baby off. Oh, why can't we see the color? Come on. All right. That's better. I guess I don't know what I'm doing after all. So like I was saying, the first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and create some tiers So I want to cut this baby off right about at my high hip level, and then add a second tier, which will take it to be just above my knee, like so. And again, instead of having 1, 2, 3 rows of elastic gathering, I'm going to have the first row with elastic. The second row is going to have like my drawstring situation, like my little bow thing in my bob. And then the third row is going to have the original elastic casing. So at the end of it all, I should have a skirt that looks like this instead. So this is tier 1. And then let's see if we can make it just a little bit darker. This is going to be tier 2. As I said, I'm not sure yet if I'm going to do this as an exposed ruffle right across here, but at least you guys know what the idea is. So now that we have it all like drawn up, let's get our fabric on the cutting mat. So I have my iPad with the instructions right here, and I have drawn from my handy dandy notebook. Have you guys ever seen Blue's Clues? Well, this is my handy dandy notebook. I'm going to use it just to make a few jottings on the sizing and the like lengths and whatnot. So the first thing the pattern instructions tell you to do is to have a finished length from waist to hem and add 3¼ inches for your cut-on facing and 1½ inches for your hem. So usually for my skirts, I like to have a finished skirt of just about 24 inches. This takes me from my waist to just above knee. So that is going to be the entire length of my skirt. But of course, I did say that I want to create 2 tiers. Now, my first tier, I think the measurement from my natural waist to just about my hip area, I think is about 11 or 12 inches. And I want my first tier to fall just below my hip. And so I think I want my first tier to be about, let's say, maybe 16 inches. So we'll do 24 minus 16 inches equals 8 inches. So then we have a proportion of 1 to 3 in terms of the ratio. So my second tier is going to be 1/3 of my final length, which is 24. And my first tier is going to be 2/3 of my final length, which is going to be 16. I hope that's not too confusing, you guys. Anyway, all you need to know is that you want to have your finished waist measurement and you want your skirt to be nicely proportioned. So I think a 2 to 1, sorry, this should be 2 to 1 ratio is good for me and my skirt. So again, my first tier is going to be 16 inches. So first tier, 16 inches. And then my second tier is going to be 8 inches. So this is the finished skirt length, and this has no seam allowance on it. So the instructions tell you that your cut-on facing at your waistline needs to be 3¼ inches. So to my first tier with 16 inches, I'm going to add 3¼ inches for my facing. And of course, I'm going to need seam allowance for adding my first tier to my second tier, and I'm going to go with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. So 3¼ plus 5⅛ is 3�6/8 or 3¾ inches. So I'm going to add the 3¾ inches to my 16. So I'm now at 16 plus 3¾ inches equals to 19¾ inches is going to be what I'm going to cut out for the length of tier 1. For tier 2, the instructions tell you that you need a hem of 1½. So my tier is 8 inches plus 1½ inches for the hem. Plus I'm going to need to use the same 5/8 inch seam allowance for adding tier 1 to tier 2. So we'll do 5/8 inch. So 1½, which is 1 4/8, plus 5/8 equals 2¼ inches. So I'm going to add now 2¼ inches to 8 inches, which is the original skirt tier length. I'm going to do 8 inches plus 2¼ inches equals 10¼ inches. And this is going to be the length of tier number 2. Now, in terms of the width of both of my skirt pieces, the instructions tell you that the width should be half of your finished circumference plus 1 inch for seam allowances. So the inference is that they're using 1/2 inch seam allowance on each seam. I'm going to be using 5/8 of an inch because I'm just comfortable with that seam allowance, and I don't want to confuse myself too much when I'm constructing my skirt. I want to use the seam allowances that are the same if entirely possible, and it is. So I'm going to go with 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now my waistline is 34 inches. I would like to have a gathered skirt that is a fully gathered skirt. Now my hip line is 43 inches. Because this skirt has to slip on over my hips and up to my waist, I want to make sure that whatever my finished circumference is going to have enough room for my hips. So what I think I want to do is I want to multiply my hip by, let's say, 2. If I do 43 by 2, we have 86 inches. So we need to have at least 86 inches of fabric to comfortably fit the circumference of our hip. Because if you were to do just your hip circumference of 43, then you'll probably end up with a straight skirt. I want to have gathers, and so I'm going to use I'm going to use the circumference of my hip, multiply it by 2, and then I'm going to multiply that result by 2 again because I have a front skirt and a back skirt. So for my front skirt, I'm going to cut 43 inches width, and I'm going to cut first tier 19 3/4 inches in length, and that is going to be for my front skirt, and I'll repeat the same thing for my back skirt. Now, because Ankara fabric is 44 inches, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the selvage edges and use my width of fabric. One piece for my front and one piece for my back. So my total circumference, once I sew my front to my back, will be just about 86 inches. Obviously, once I take off the 1/2 inch on either side for my seam allowance. Now, for my second tier, I want my second tier, I think, to be more gathered than my first tier. So instead, on my second tier, I'm going to use, okay, I need to turn the page, but I also need you guys. All right, I'm going to tear it out because I want you guys to be able to see like what I have and what I'm writing. So for tier number 2, I want my second tier to be twice as gathered as my first tier. If my cut piece for my first tier is going to be 43 inches for just one piece, I want my cut piece to be 86 inches. Again, my Ankara fabric is only 44 inches wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 4 pieces, 43 inches in width, multiplied by our length, which is 10 1/4 inches. And when I'm constructing my pieces, I'll sew 2 pieces together for my front tier and 2 pieces together for my back tier. And that will give me a finished circumference of 86 times 2. All right, let's do it this way. 2 6s are 12 and 1, 2 8s are 16 and 1, 172 inches. So that is going to be my total circumference for my second tier. Again, I need to go ahead and add a 1/2 inch seam allowance for each of my cut seams. Now, I'm hoping you guys that this was not too difficult of an explanation for you. It does require a little bit of math if you want to hack the pattern. If you're sewing up the pattern straight as the instruction said, then it's just a matter of using your finished length, whatever length you want your skirt to be. So if you just want one tier at 24 inches long, then that will be your finished skirt length. If your waist circumference is 30 inches and you want your skirt to be twice as full, then you will just cut 60 inches by your length of 24 inches, and that's simple mathematics. But if you want to get into this hacking game, I'm hoping that you have understood my explanations. If you have not, then please be sure to drop me a comment in the description box. Ask me anything that you want to know, and I'll try to go ahead and answer any questions that you have to clarify any of the workings that I just did. So now that I know what I'm cutting, I'm going to go ahead and grab my fabric. All right, so I've grabbed my fabric, and this fabric does have a right side and a wrong side. Granted, the wrong side of your fabric can easily be mistaken for the right side, but if you look closely at it, then you can see that the wrong side of the fabric, especially where the black outline is a little bit faded compared to the right side of the fabric, which is on this side. Again, because you're constructing things in a hurry, you might miss it. Once I cut my pattern pieces out, I am going to put a marking on the right side of my fabric. So the first thing that I want to do, just to make my life a little bit easier, is to fold my fabric selvage to selvage. So this is the selvage edge, and this is the opposite selvage edge, just in case you don't know what the selvage of the fabric is. It would be these markings right here, which demarcate on this particular fabric what your selvage edge is. And I'm just going to fold them in half. All right, so I had to fold my fabric in half off camera, just because I want to make sure that I have my selvages lined up properly, and so I can establish the grain line or the fold line in this particular case of my fabric. So now that I have my fabric folded in half, sorry, let's just shift it over just a little bit more so that you guys can see. I'm going to go ahead now and cut out my first front tier for my skirt. All right, so I'm just going to use my pattern weights to help secure my fabric on my cutting mat. I don't want it to be shifting whilst I'm marking or cutting. All right, this does feel a little bit awkward just because my ring light, which is holding my phone, is sort of in the way, but I want you guys to be able to see. So I'm going to show you on camera how I mark my fabric, but then I'm going to go off camera and just make sure that I have marked it accurately from an angle which is sort of more conducive to marking. So I've lined up my fold line with one of the grid line markings on my cutting mat, and I want to go ahead and establish a squared off edge at the top of my fabric. So I'm just gonna make sure that the top of my fabric has a straight edge from which to measure, like so. So I'm using my yardstick and my charcoal liner. So now that we have marked in this line right here, which is a 90-degree line to my fold line right here, I'm now going to measure down the length of my first tier, which is 19 3/4 inches. All right, so I'm just going to mark in the end of my skirt, like so. All right, now that I have my lining, I do apologize if you can hear the cocks crowing. I do live in the Caribbean, you guys, and we have like lots of chickens and, you know, other like wildlife animals about. And so from time to time, you might be able to hear animals in my videos. And so I'm hoping that they're not annoying you as much as they annoy me. But just in case you can hear them, I'm sorry. So I'm just cutting apart my first skirt here. Once I've cut it apart, I now have a straight edge at my cut line, and I can use this first skirt piece to cut out my second skirt piece. But just before I do, I need to go back and square off the top of my fabric. I did mark it in, but I didn't cut it out. So if you have a rotary cutter, then you can use that. I do much prefer my rotary cutter when I'm using slippery fabrics. But on fabrics such as like Ankara and stuff, then I'm happy to use my scissors because they don't shift about as much as like viscoses and stuff do. Right, so this is my front of my skirt for tier number 1. So I'm going to use this piece now to cut out my back skirt for tier number 1, and then I'll be back to show you what I have. So these are my first tier pieces, front skirt and back skirt. Now that I have those out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and cut out tier number 2. So for tier number 2, I need to cut the same width of fabric, and I'm going to cut each piece 10 1/4 inches, and I'm going to cut 4 with the same measurements. So in my case, because my fabric is 44 inches wide, it's just going to be 44 inches by the 10 1/4 length. Now I want my finished side seams to be 43 inches. So I probably should use a 1/2 inch seam allowance, but I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference, again, because this is a gathered skirt. All right, so I had already established the 90-degree at the corner of my skirt. So I'm just going to measure down 10 1/4 inches for tier number 2. So that takes me to right here. I'm just going to draw my line back in, like so. and then I can cut it apart. Once I cut out my second tier piece, so this will be the first pattern piece as it were for tier number 2, then I can use it as a guide to cut out my other 3 pieces, because remember, for my second tier I need to have 4 of this piece. So I'm going to go ahead now and cut out 3 others. All right, so all 4 of my second tier pieces have been cut out, and now that we have all our pieces cut out and ready to go, then we can start the construction. So stay with me, guys. Tier 1, tier 2, let's do it. I was about to do the markings for the casing, and then I realized I didn't talk about the pockets other than to tell you that I wanted to put pockets in the skirt. So the instructions are accompanied by a free pocket pattern piece that you can download and print to cut out your pockets. However, I didn't do that because recently I made an Ankara skirt and I had initially put pockets in it. But then my client didn't like the pockets, and so I went ahead and removed them. And so I do have a pair of pockets just lying about. Now they don't match my fabric, but I'm pretty sure once I understitch them, they'll be hidden within the inside of my skirt. And so I don't think it's a big deal for me to go ahead and use them. And I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. They're already cut, they have already been pre-prepared, and so I think I'm just going to utilize this in my pattern. The second thing I thought of is this. When I was doing the calculation for my second tier, I only added a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance to the top portion of my tier. Now, if I'm going to do an exposed ruffle at the second tier, I probably should have added more seam allowance than that so that I can have like a paper bag gathered effect at my tier. If I do it at 5/8 of an inch, then I don't think it's going to be significant enough. And so I'm probably going to have to take up more of my skirt piece as seam allowance if I decide to do my exposed tier. And that means that my skirt is either going to be a little shorter than I originally anticipated, or I'll have to reduce the depth of my hem. So bear in mind, if you're going to do the exposed ruffle tier, you probably should add more hem, more hem allowance to the top of your second tier, just to accommodate much better for that ruffled effect, so that it looks like, intentional. So those are the 2 things I think I forgot to mention. And so now I can get started working on my front and back tier 1 pieces. All right, so I started this video in one outfit and ta-da! Now I'm in something new. But folks, I sat down to start editing my video and I realized that instead of making a YouTube video, I was making a movie. It was just so long. And so I made the executive decision to split my video into parts. So part 1 is what you have just seen, which is the plans and working out the math and cutting out the pattern pieces, just preparing all of the steps for construction. So part 2, which is coming up next, will share with you the construction of my skirt. You'll be able to see the big mistake that I made and what I did to go about rectifying that mistake. So if you're interested in seeing the entire project coming together, then be sure to come on back for part 2. It will help if you are a subscriber, if you hit the subscribe icon and turn your notification bell on so you never miss any of my upcoming videos, including part 2 of this Tessuti Fabrics multi-elastic waist skirt. Now, if you enjoyed part 1, please be sure to go ahead and give me a thumbs up, drop me a comment down below and let me know whether you found my instructions easy enough to understand or whether you thought that all that math was a little bit over your head. I'll be very curious to know what you thought of that part of this video. So until next time, and there will be a next time because I already promised you a part 2, stay calm, stay cool, stay safe, and absolutely keep sewing. Peace.